Hello and welcome to Hill and Valley, and welcome to our new studio. So if you guys have been following along for a while, you know we made a lot of content at our old studio, which we love dearly. We made a couple of studio tours and videos just in and around the studio. Since then we've obviously moved. So today we wanted to start a new series about that transition and our new studio as a whole. Mostly wanted to start off just by talking about the process of from the point where we were at our old studio to looking for new studios, all the way up until moving here and why we did it. So back when we first started our business, we knew we were going to need a space to make things, and more importantly, a space just to conduct business.
Adam and I moved into a house with Adam's best friend Jordan, and we were renting it out, and there was a third bedroom that we created like a small office. And the office was what we needed at the time. It was probably only like 100 square feet.
It was probably like 100 square feet, and it was like 90 degrees year-round.
It's like 10 by 10.
And then we also had like a dining room studio where like our 9-foot seamless just fit the room. And we would roll it out and do like headshots or creative sessions and shoot like school assignments sometimes.
It was great. It definitely made us feel like we were doing something right, but having an actual physical space that either of us could go to at any time to do work was super important, and is probably one of the main reasons why we were able to grow our business as fast as we did.
Definitely hard to separate work from home when we had this office, but some of us were still in school. I was working full-time, and it was nice to have like a separate space that we could just work and get stuff done. It was actually a really productive space too, because it was so tight, like space-wise, that you kind of were in there to like get stuff done and then get out.
I think one of the bigger reasons we were looking for a studio space was to like help legitimize our business, on top of we knew we wanted to grow into having more employees and showing clients, you know, our work in our studio.
When we were first looking for spaces, we knew that we weren't going to get much with the money that we had, which was basically no money, but we knew that we needed a space, and this was probably right before COVID. We started looking for spaces and ended up finding one pretty much during COVID. And we were looking for a pretty big open space, something that was kind of like a blank canvas. We didn't really know what we wanted, so we didn't want anything that required a lot of work, and we didn't want anything that had a bunch of work done to it.
A lot of places weren't very professional or weren't very kept up very nice, and we didn't really like that. Like I said, we wanted a nice place that we could bring clients to and that also legitimized our business. So a lot of the places we looked at they were good price, but they were not so good or not in a great area. And with our equipment and with, you know, our employees and showing clients around, we wouldn't want people to be there really.
The studios we looked at were pretty much all like artist space, which basically just means like the slums of commercial buildings, somebody's basement.
So we looked at a bunch of spaces, and we finally found the Hungerford. We had actually reached out to them prior to, and they didn't have a space. And then once we looked at all these spaces and we couldn't find something, we reached out to them again and we're like, hey, we're still looking, do you have anything?
Somebody was like, hey, actually, I think we'll have a space. Can you come check it out real quick? And we went to look at it, and I guess some old resident was moving out. I think it was like a school was using it as like a backup, like almost storage place or something. And when we went and looked at it, it was the ugliest space I'd ever seen. It was like all drop ceiling.
It was good in a lot of ways, close enough to the inner city that, you know, if we had shoots in the city or if we had clients that were in the city, it was, you know, a quick drive.
Just like gross, and looked like an office from the 1950s.
We all lived in the city, so it was a very quick commute for us, and, you know, like a lot of our friends and family, which is nice.
The lighting was horrible, there were no windows, and the guy told us, hey, look, if you want one of these spaces, we're gonna take this big open area with all these cubicles and split it in two. And we're like, oh, that sounds great. Could you make it as open as possible, get rid of everything, get rid of the drop ceiling, so that we can see the windows, and paint everything white, rip up all the carpet so that there's flooring. And they said, yeah. So we kind of took a chance with that. We signed a lease, had no idea what it was actually going to look like in the end. And so a couple months went by of us waiting and waiting. And finally, we were able to move into our new space.
Moving in, it was hot. It was like the height of summer. It was so stressful, but we got it done with like the help of friends and family.
So going from this small room to this bigger space, when I first walked in, it looked like huge. Like it looked, like just a lot of room for opportunities there when I first walked in. And after a few months, I slowly realized that it was actually smaller than I thought because of our equipment and our desks and everything kind of had to fit in there.
It was nice, honestly. The first time I came in to see it, I was impressed. It was just like a really big open space, had hardwood floors. All the walls were brick but painted over white, which I thought was really nice for a photo and video studio. It wasn't enormous, but it had pretty high ceilings and was just an open, empty space. There was no rooms or interior walls or anything. And it seemed pretty good for what Hill and Valley needed to do at the time.
I had never been in, I guess, like a production studio kind of like that. And it just felt really nice to have like a space there that you guys dedicated to a lot of different things like that.
Favorite memory from the old studio, geez. Okay, yeah, I do. It's more of like a favorite nightmare, is that okay? Yeah, so when we first moved in, we were super excited. We're like, yes, we're legit now. We have a space. Like, we're a business now. And something that was super humbling was that we moved in like July, and we didn't really think about it beforehand, but it turns out there's no AC in this new space of ours. So it gets pretty hot in the middle of the summer. And probably like the second week we moved in, we had a big commercial shoot, and all of the clients were going to be coming into our space, and we were going to be shooting a lot of interviews, and they were going to be all dressed up, and it was pretty hot in there. So I was pretty much panicking the whole time, like trying to make these people feel comfortable. I was like, wow, these people are spending a lot of money on this video. I want them to have a good experience. So basically, out of like sheer desperation, we were like looking at ways to, I don't know, I must have done like days of research on like, how do you cool a space down that has no windows? Well, we had windows, they just wouldn't open because they were commercial windows or whatever. It used to be a syrup factory. I don't know the ins and outs of that part. But anyways, the windows don't open. You can't really, there's nowhere to vent an AC unit. There's no existing AC unit. So what do? My solution was to put a bunch of ice in the sink and a fan to blow the cool air, right? That makes sense, right? So yeah, it didn't really work. Everybody was still sweating, especially when they're dressed in sweaters and it's 90 degrees in there.
So see that up there, the air conditioning that we just put in? That's the new AC we just got put in. You see this little blue tape on the side still? We didn't take it out when we put it up there, of course. So now.
Adam had mentioned that, hey, if the space next to us ever becomes available, like we should take it, as like a joke. I thought he was joking at least, and I thought it was funny. And
about a couple months into this 1-year lease, we knew our neighbor. We got to know them pretty well, and they're a fellow photographer. We had like a little common hallway we shared with them. We had been following the photographer next to us, and I had been seeing hints that she might not be there anymore. So before even that person even moved out, we messaged the landlord, and we knew kind of how competitive the building was, and we said, hey, if that person ever moves out, let us know first. Because what else would you do at 10 p.m. on a Sunday?
Oh yeah, I forgot that's what time it is.
Except for set up new furniture.
But we got new desks from IKEA, and Adam is setting them up right now. We're gonna have 4 desks over in this corner instead of over here. We have 3, but they're pretty old desks and they don't work very well, so we have 4 kind of corner desks, and they're gonna go right over here.
I remember one time I walked in our small studio still before we had gotten the new space. Adam was in some kind of program mapping the new space like on the computer. And I'm like, what is this? He goes, oh, that's the new space. Like, that's when we get it. This is like how it's gonna be laid out. And I thought that was so funny that like a few months before we even moved in there, Adam had this whole plan of like where he was gonna put everything. And it was so funny.
we have a common hallway. We're willing to pay extra for it.
We always had ideas of what we would do with the other side of the space, and like we had pretty much a whole plan before we even got the space. Turns out too that a room across the hall was also available. It was a lot smaller, and we ended up making that into a storage and a podcast room, which is really nice.
The coolest part about this landlord was that he was super flexible, and like you could just pitch him ideas, and we're like, hey, how about you take the wall down that you just built and connect the spaces again?
And we're like, we just want to take this one wall out so that we can like utilize the AC in the other space, as well as just like have a go-between besides like going out the doors.
So right now we are putting plastic wrap on two of the two sides of the pillars because they're taking down that wall tomorrow morning. Thank God, finally happened. We signed at least officially yesterday or 2 days ago. So they're doing that tomorrow. So we're just putting this plastic wrap up to save our equipment that's over there and also the new desks we got. So that's what we're up to.
They were awesome. They came in, they didn't ask any questions, and one day the guy just like took a hammer to it and started hacking the wall down.
It had been a while since I'd been to the studio, and I showed up and it was twice as big. And I remember that moment of just walking in and being like, hey guys, something's different here.
So when I first came in, I kind of couldn't really even tell that there was a wall there. I guess I could have collected that from the hallway, but
Just like a huge victory, and the reason it was such a big victory was because that side had air conditioning. So we were so stoked. I remember the second there was a smallest hole in that wall from one hammer strike, Rick was like, I can feel the cold air blowing. I can feel it coming. And the plastic we had set up blew back a little bit, so we're like, air conditioning.
My favorite memory of the smaller space was all the live sessions we had with a bunch of musicians. That was always super fun.
a video we shot with Steven Babcock, that whole like visualizer walkthrough was super cool to like plan out and watch.
We would always decorate the studio into like a really cool set and then have them play a few songs and then interview them, and I thought that was always super cool.
Steven, pick a pick, take one.
Hey everybody, it's Steven Babcock here playing song number 2 as part of the Pick a Pick randomizer, playing some songs that I wrote and potentially a cover song, according to my list. When you found me, darling, I was a fireball. Well,
It was really cool to see how you kind of put it together with blocking out the light and like choosing which windows to keep open and which ones to close, and with the lighting that they had with that like super cool gobo that was on the wall. That was kind of my favorite shoot that we did there.
Worst Ways is about letting go of someone even when you think you're already over them and you're really not. Worst Ways is about finally letting go of something for good.
So there were a handful of things I really liked about the old studio, and now that we have a new studio, I have a lot more perspective on it. The main thing I really appreciated at the old studio, which I kind of saw as a downfall in many ways, was the fact that it was on the second floor and that the windows were really high up, even higher than eye level, so you couldn't really see out of them, you'd only see the sky. And I like this from like a security standpoint, because we don't just want people wandering through the building.
The combined desk with all the editing stuff was kind of useful, because you didn't have to, like everyone was right there, like you guys said. You could just say like, hey Adam, hey Rick, and they're sitting right there together, the kind of the mega desk together. It was kind of nice to be able to like ask questions and move around and look over, be like, hey, look at this, and you don't have to travel across the entire room, and you could just peer your head off the side and look.
I really like the wood floors, which to me, they kind of seemed like bare bones at the time. I was like, oh wow, we don't even have like carpet or like tile, but looking back at it, like they were awesome. They looked super cool, and some were in kind of disrepair in some spots, but you know, it gave the place a lot of character.
So this isn't a super exciting feature of the old space, but I think my favorite part about the old Hill and Valley studio was the white painted brick walls. I don't know why. I think once I joined the team and started shooting some stuff in there, I found that was a really nice background for a lot of different videos or photos we would take, because depending on how you light it, it can be very blank and almost as if it was just a pure flat white wall, but you could also get creative with lighting and bring out the texture a lot. And it was nice because it didn't look like a blank void like a lot of studios with like a white seamless will look like. It had a little bit of character, but it wasn't distracting.
The third thing I really liked about the old space was the sense of like community. We were not the only commercial tenant. We were one of a couple of hundred maybe. So there were a lot of other businesses in the area, and that gave it a sense of community. They were all artist spaces, so there were a lot of people that you could talk to about similar situations that maybe they were in, or there were a lot of photographers, so you could talk about gear and kind of just have fun. And being the only commercial space in this building, it definitely gets quiet and a little bit, I guess, lonely, you know?
So prior to getting our studio, I was working kind of like a 9 to 5, and I remember going to work every day to my little office, and it would be very secluded, and I would just get my work done and go home. So when we got our first studio, I was just so excited every day to go to work, and it was an open atmosphere. So I got to like talk to Adam, talk to Rick, anyone that was coming into the studio. I had like people to collaborate with, and it was also just such a more welcoming environment than like a corporate position.
I think once I started coming in more frequently to help out with projects and was gaining a larger role with the team, it was just really cool kind of having this home away from home dedicated studio and office space, because the amount of freelancing and stuff that I've done has always been just out of my home office or my bedroom, and it had really been since I was in photo school that I had dedicated space to go in and be creative and focus on work. And so, although there wasn't anything crazy spectacular about the old studio, it felt like a little home away from home workspace, which I really enjoyed.
And it was just exciting to go to work every day, and it was our own space, and it was definitely like a relaxed environment to get work done, but still very productive. So at that time, I just remember like this overall like feeling of like awe that was my life at that time, and that I got to like work for myself and, you know, be able to go a place that we had control over and that was ours.
So thanks for checking out this first episode in our little mini-series about the studio and our new studio more specifically. If you want to see more videos related to this one, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be trying making this more of an ongoing series. So over the next couple of months, we will have a few new episodes related to this one. And be sure to give this one a like, it really helps our channel out. And if you have any questions about our studio, or maybe you want to get some ideas for your own studio, feel free to leave us a comment. And thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.
So the most challenging part of the move was this space was still under construction while we were moving in.
It was impossible to organize anything because everything needed to go out there.